Alright, this is part 2 of video log 2, illegal kidnapping of my girlfriend's daughter and the blatant comments by CPS against the Constitution. The time on deck now is 14:38. What I previously went over in the last video was the initial arrest and the interview that they did with my girlfriend's daughter to see if there was any kind of sexual misconduct or abuse that had happened to her. And this was videotaped. And this is pretty much not necessarily a transcription, but this is the report that DHS put out about that. DHS, I'm talking about CPS, the Child Protective Services. And that's what I went over in the last video. Now I'm going to go over the next things that happened. I was arrested, obviously, that night, and the next day they found a grenade launcher, or that night they found a grenade launcher in my home whenever they executed a warrant into my home looking for DNA evidence. Now, the child in question, my biological daughter, made statements against me that I did certain sexual acts to her on specific dates. And one of those specific dates was January 2nd, which I was not alone with her during that time at all that day. That's the testimony of my girlfriend, myself, anybody else that knew where we were during that time. Now, the clothes that she wore that day were actually given over on January 2nd. These clothes that she wore on that day were given over to the officials. They took bed sheets, they took pillows, they took couch cushions, my clothes, her clothes, like all kinds of stuff. And I have the DNA report here. I will get into that whenever I get into the other case. I'll read each one specifically. They did not find my biological daughter's DNA on anything, anywhere, not even on her own clothing. There was food and things like that, and I was not on anything of hers. All they found my DNA on was the bedspread, and they found my girlfriend's DNA there. Imagine that. Wow, I was pretty appalled, you know. But anyway, moving on. So I was arrested. I went on trial for having an M203 grenade launcher in my home. I was kept in custody from January 12th, interrogated heavily during those days, over just a grenade launcher. They'd never asked me one question about the sexual abuse. But they moved me to a federal detention facility, and I stayed there until my trial, April, I want to say 11th. I was found not guilty, I believe April 12th, and released as far as the federal custody and returned to county custody, where I came back to Stevens County, Oklahoma. At that time I went on bail. They gave me bail for $150,000. The DA asked for $1 million because of my ties to the militia and because I was a flight risk and a threat to the community. Once again, wow. So, they released me April 12th. It was the morning of the 13th, I believe, when Abigail Wilson and 2 armed deputies came out to the house. And she informed me that because I had a history, I was not allowed to be around children anymore. Well, I, of course, protested that. And she stated that as long as I was not alone with that everything was fine. I wasn't staying in the house with her at night. Everything was fine. They wouldn't come take her, and that would be all right. And they came periodically to do checks. Sometime in the April, beginning of May, end of April, beginning of May, they came over, and it was 2 armed deputies. Deputy Lawson was one of them. I don't remember the other deputy. And Abigail Wilson. They came to make entry into my home. I denied. I said, no. Do you have a warrant? Do you have any kind of paperwork? Do you have anything that says that you're allowed to come into my home right now? They said, no. I said, you're not coming into my home. They said, you don't have a choice. Deputy Lawson forced the door open and allowed Abigail Wilson to come in. Now, in the deputy's defense, the deputies did not enter my home. However, Abigail Wilson did enter my home, and I was unable to get her to leave my house. But I sat down, and I had a conversation with her. During this conversation, you know, I tried to tell her that this is a divorce custody dispute, that this was false allegations, this happened in the past. She did not care about any of that. She said, as far as we are concerned, Mr. Dyer, you did this. You did this. And it doesn't matter if you get found not guilty in court. It doesn't matter. Anything else that happens, you did this, and you're always going to have a history with DHS, and there's no way to get rid of it. Wow. Okay, and I think that was, yeah, I don't remember the exact date of that, but they did violate, of course, the Fourth Amendment, I believe, by entering my home without any kind of warrant or cause and forcing their way into my house. Alright, so we go along. April, May, everything's fine. June, everything's fine. We get a call sometime around June 5th, June 7th, something like that, and DHS wants to talk to us. My attorney says, don't talk to him. I say I'm going to talk to him anyway, and I go down and I take a tape recorder with me. During this conversation, let me get my transcript here, because I can transcribe the conversation that we had. During this conversation, DHS, Abigail Wilson, the worker, she informed me that I needed to take classes because of my propensity to sexually abuse children, and that if I refused to take these classes and admit to being a child molester, that they would possibly take I from her mother in our household. So here's some excerpts of what our conversation consisted of. Now, whenever we went in there, we were, asking, well, what's going on? Why are we having to do this? Why are you saying that we're not being protective parents? And her mother was asking this. And Abigail Wilson said, well, we're kind of in a tough spot right now because, well, it's not that you're not a protecting parent, it's just that you're a non-believing parent. And she had made these statements in the past that she was irritated at Amanda because she didn't believe the allegations against me. Not that she wasn't protecting her daughter, but they were irritated that she did not believe, because she saw both sides of the evidence, and she knew that she was there on January 2nd and it was impossible for anything to have happened. Okay, and then she goes on to say, I've explained to you kind of how we don't consider the criminal case as much as what you guys are giving credit for. In other words, it doesn't even matter if you get found not guilty. You're going to have to deal with this forever. She goes on here to say that she's going to file a petition with the DA, and depending on what we do is kind of going to decide whether or not she's going to petition to have her child taken from the home. She says there's not imminent risk to I at this time. There's not like an emergency immediate custody like a lot of people kind of associate child welfare with. So she's saying right here there is no imminent risk to the child. And you need to remember this because of what will come up later. No imminent risk to the child. There's a possibility we'll ask for a petition, ask for custody of her, just due to the fact that you two are in the same relationship, in the same home. And they informed me again that I have confirmed history and that I'm refusing to complete services. Now, these services that she asked me to complete is a 2-year service plan where I have to go to a doctor and admit to being, because if you don't admit to it, you fell out to start with. So I have to admit to being a child rapist, I have to admit to raping my daughter, and then I go through a 2-year program that I pay for, and the state or this company, whoever, private organization, gets the money, and I have to be subjected to all kinds of mental testing and have my penis hooked up to probes and see what I like as far as my sexual preferences. It's very invasive, very, very ridiculous. And since I'm a free American and I'm not going to pay my money to an organization like that and give up my Fifth Amendment rights and be forced to do this, I said no, of course. So they informed me at that time that if I'm saying no, that there's a possibility that they're going to take her daughter. And they tell me again, the supervisor there tells me it's not the same as a criminal trial. We just have to have enough evidence to say that the child is at risk. They could be, they are, there is a future potential that the child needing protection. So they probably could say that about anybody's child. If your child's ever at risk of maybe, I don't know, falling off the front porch or getting into a fight at school, anything where they need protection, they can take your child. I'll continue this on the next section. I'll go through this transcript some more.